57 of the Big Daddy Liberty Show. My name is Sihleng Obese, Big Daddy Liberty. Yeah, man. I am going to give it a moment, just a moment, to allow more people to hop onto the stream. This will be relatively short. I've just pulled over to the side of the road, obviously, and I'm driving to Rosebank to one of the labs. I won't name it because I'm sure they probably won't want to be named. um, to see if I can get an antibody test. This is the one where they actually draw blood and they test for whether you have the particular antibodies that are clearly now mapped and known to respond to the coronavirus or COVID-19. So that'll be interesting because for me, it's more a case of satisfying a curiosity. And speaking about curiosity, before I waffle on, can I just have a quick confirmation that you guys can even hear me? And you can do that by just sending hashtag #StandWithBDL in the comment section. And at least I'll then know that you guys can actually hear me. That'll be useful. Until that's happening, let me just quickly turn. All right. Sorry, you may have lost me there for a moment, but I was just putting the silent mode on or the do not disturb mode on so that I don't have any calls come through and disturb this particular stream. Because, as I said, it's not going to be a particularly long stream. Let's see here if I. All right. I'm seeing some comments already, Rickster. Lol. All right, guys. I just need to know if you can hear me. Sorry, I didn't see if there's any confirmation of that. As soon as I just see a anti-Marxist, shout out to you. I see you, homie. If anybody can just confirm that you can hear me, because there is a bit of a. Okay, there you go. Fiona van Niekerk says yes. Thank you very much for that. Shout out to you, Stefano. I see you, homie. And Michelle Poole, I see you guys. Okay, as I said, this will be a very short stream because the most important thing to it is interrogating, for my own purposes, a lot of the conflicting accounts of things that I keep hearing. So as you'll know, and as you've been watching perhaps on other channels, particularly on Germ's channel, Germ, of course, being a South African cartoonist, also has a YouTube channel. He's brought on a lot of medical experts from around the world who have called into question the reliability, of using the PCR test. That's the one where they use a swab and they shove it down your nose or to the back of your throat in the hopes that the swab will have a sample of the SARS-CoV-2 virus. And then from that, your doctor will then, obviously say, look, because there is traces of this thing, you clearly have COVID-19. That's how I've understood that this thing works. But there is a lot of medical practitioners who are calling this into question as to whether these tests are bringing out, firstly, whether these tests, period, are reliable for looking for the particular virus, and if from that we can extrapolate that everybody who has a positive test therefore has COVID-19. And there's some serious evidence to this effect, that there might be a dubious relationship between this test and whether someone has COVID-19 or not. To the extent where in some countries, people have successfully sued the state, for arguing, of course, in their suit that the relationship between these two simply isn't there, and that the policy response, therefore, is based on a dubious proposition. I think it was in Portugal where the lawsuit, either Portugal or Spain. I keep butchering it. I don't like. I should actually just look it up. But so it's with that in the back of my own mind, where I now say to myself, look, a few weeks ago, 3 or 4 weeks ago, I had flu. I had a respiratory infection, which lingered for about 2 weeks or so until I saw a doctor. And the doctor, uh, very professional, by the way. This is not an attack on my doctor or anything like that. She was very professional because, and you remember when I spoke about this when I sort of began to heal up, and I mentioned that it was very curious and interesting for me that my doctor was more worried about pneumonia. She was more worried about me having possibly pneumonia than the coronavirus and COVID-19, which was very curious to me, given the fear mongering and the constant messaging that we hear through our politicians and the mainstream media. I would have assumed that medical practitioners who practice at the very least, echo that same concern that, the moment someone comes in with symptoms that obviously are affecting their respiratory system, that in all likelihood, excuse me, I would assume that their biggest thing that they'll look for is the coronavirus. But that wasn't the case with me, which I found a little bit curious. And it sparked my interest in this particular instance, and I must reiterate that she literally was more concerned with my health. And she said as much, like, biggest concern is pneumonia. And she even ordered an x-ray to say, look, I'd rather rule that out, and then I'll deal with whatever the infection is after that. And that's what happened. I got an x-ray that came back all clear. Um, and then after that x-ray, after she examined it, she was actually much calmer. She had a chilled predisposition, which again, I found a little bit weird because we were told, if you remember, oh, coronavirus, we were told, if you're obese and if you are hypertensive and if you have diabetes in particular, it's almost certainly a death sentence, we were told. So I found it very weird that she was very chilled after she saw that it wasn't pneumonia. She'd ruled that out, and then she quite relaxed said, "Look, you've got a respiratory infection." She suspects that COVID has latched onto that, and to confirm it, in her view, she then ordered the PCR test, which I then did at the lab, and then I got the results of which a couple of days later to say yes, I've got COVID-19, according to this PCR test. But at that point, she'd already prescribed a strong dose of antibiotics, something to clear my chest, those fizzy Acu 200 or blah, blah, blah. What else did she give me? She gave me a very strong painkiller, just for the aches and pains, and which I didn't really take. I wasn't really in pain, to be honest. But, anyway, that's basically everything that she prescribed. And then I took, off of the advice of another doctor friend, Jonathan Witt, um, you know, some other stuff, which he advised that can assist with, and it wasn't just Jonathan, to be honest, even family members who had gone through it were like, hey man, consider taking a zinc complex and, some vitamin C and homie chill in the sun for a bit. And of course, I did exactly all of those things. I took my meds. I took it very seriously, don't get me wrong, because I do have a history of getting very bad bronchitis. Because I just moved around a bit just to make sure that I have signal. Let's do that. Oh, it's way too loud. Okay, thank you. I needed someone to confirm. And Sterling by MF, I see you. I see you, Debbie Danger, also. Let me conclude the thoughts, because, as I said, this shouldn't be a ramble. Uh, you know, as I said, I'm on my way to the lab now. And for me, it's just a case of confirming in real terms whether a lot of the claims made against the sole reliance on the PCR test have any validity, right? But I can't extrapolate from my own example. This would be just for my own example. In other words, did I have COVID-19? Did I really have COVID-19? I'd be desperately interested to find that out, if I'm to be brutally honest. Um, and maybe with that being said, I will bring you the results of the test. Um, yeah, man, I'll bring you the results of the test. I will hide nothing. So if it comes back as negative, you guys will know that. I'll make sure that you know that. Sorry, I know there's probably a very loud fan noise. It's just that because this is fixed on my windscreen, it gets very hot quickly, and then the phone spazzes out. So let me just be in the shade first things first. There we go. Um, and let me just quickly get to my thought process before I wrap up. So on my way to the lab now, we'll literally see if they allow me to film the process. That'll be interesting. But I'll definitely bring you the results. Because I think for me, it's also critically important as someone who has those comorbidities that we were told, COVID-19 will just kill you when you have. I think it's critically important for me to know if I really had this virus. And in fact, if I did have it, I'll be actually quite chuffed because it would effectively mean that, yes, I have the antibodies for it. And of course, my immune system would have the pathway of being able to produce the antibodies if I were to be reinfected with this virus. So it's critically important in that regard. So, Kerry, I see you. Welcome to the stream. So I will keep you posted. Look out for this. And maybe it's something which will make you think, about this issue more deeply, because there are some serious, serious expert voices who are calling into question the policy response of the state, and not just South Africa, by the way, all governments around the world, based off of this feverish insistence on using PCR testing to drive policy. Debbie Else, I see you. Welcome to the stream. So it'll be very interesting, therefore, to see if the antibody test will then either confirm that I've had the virus, in which case I'll actually personally be quite chuffed because it really was it felt like a flu. And it'll be obviously quite exciting. Is the word exciting? No. Uh, I'll be chuffed to know that obviously my body has dealt with this and that my immune system really was, um, up to the task, so to speak. Shout out to you, Bason de Filius. I see you all the way from Ireland. So, guys, that's the vlog. It's not going to be long. I just had to sort of share that, especially because I promised this to you as viewers. And, I'm going to do this as just an additional means of finding out, did Big Daddy Liberty actually have COVID-19? Are PCR tests, insofar as it was administered to me and it was used as a basis of diagnosing that I have COVID-19, are these PCR tests actually as reliable as we're being told by some pockets of the, sort of medical fraternity, the World Health Organization et al., that the PCR tests are reliable, they'll tell us. They are a fantastic indicator of the prevalence and the spread of the disease, and therefore they argue a policy response should be to try and stop the spread, we're told. And I'm not sure this is good science at all. And I'm not sure that it is science at all, because it's now creeping up, that it seems as though, for example, there was a headline in, is it the Cape Argus yesterday, where, it said something along the lines of, people, as the second wave batters South Africa, scientists are baffled by Kailicha, not having a high number of cases or even deaths. Even though there is poor compliance, we're being told, with issues like masks and social distancing and blah, blah, blah. And one hypothesis, which I'm seeing a lot of doctors and immunologists and what's the other one? Epidemiologists. One hypothesis they're putting forward is, well, yeah, because they couldn't couldn't lock down and stay at home, and because the virus had spread in that community. If you remember, there was actually quite a big spread of it in the first wave, we were told. That it seems to be, according to these health experts, that there is a herd immunity that has now developed. people have the antibodies, and enough people in that community have the antibodies, which would therefore call into question the whole strategy that has been employed by the South African government at the behest of the Health Organization of locking people away being the most effective strategy to dealing with this, including, of course, the World Health Organization, as I see online, and it's unverified, but I see online, some people have taken a screenshot of what they defined as herd immunity as recently as 2018, and that same definition having been amended on their website currently, and they've removed one critical element, which is the idea that herd immunity can also happen by the virus itself playing itself out in the population, people recovering, and obviously developing the antibodies for it. That was their definition in 2018. The idea that there's two ways. One, the virus playing itself out, people getting the disease and recovering from it. And of course, the other is through a program of mass vaccination. Those are the two accepted definitions of how herd immunity is defined, according to the World Health Organization and their website in 2018. And the other one now, or this new definition, which they've amended on the website currently, according to these screenshots that I'm seeing, is, oh no, they say herd immunity only develops via vaccination, and almost suggest exclusively that it is through a process and a program of mass vaccination that herd immunity develops. Now, I know that this is not true. This flies in the face of what we've been told, by the health experts for years and years and years as to how immunity works. Of course, we've always been told that it's those two methods which help create immunity, which is why I'm not an anti-vaxxer. I do believe that vaccination has a critical role to play, especially for very serious, what do you call them, viruses and diseases, like smallpox and, the serious stuff that that you're immunized. Oh, goodness, why am I struggling to get that word out? That you're basically, given shots for. Let me just put it out, frame it that way. When we're kids, right? It's at least how I've been taught, the established science that it is both through vaccination and a virus or bacteria of sorts making its way through a population, those two means in particular, which builds herd immunity. So it's interesting to see this war, so to speak, of narratives and agendas amongst the medical fraternity, amongst the medical community, where for some who have yoked themselves, who have embraced the political side of this debate, are siding with the lockdown approach, the shelter people at all cost approach, the stop the spread of a virus approach, which to me doesn't make sense, but it's definitely the preferred method of the political elite. It's definitely the preferred method of politicians who, through this approach, are able to appropriate powers for themselves that they ordinarily don't have. So it's been interesting to see that side sort of versus the other side of the medical fraternity, who are saying, hey man, we've always been doing things this way because the evidence and the science had shown us that, this is how you do things. The idea of building herd immunity, of those who are less vulnerable, exposing them to a pathogen or a virus, in order to protect those who are less vulnerable through herd immunity. That's how I always assumed, and the science had always told us that these things work. Which is why, when it came to influenza, which is also a respiratory infection, a very, very infectious one, some people, especially the more vulnerable people, would go and get the flu shots, right? Because we understood that, if you're more vulnerable, give your immune system an opportunity to attack the weakest form of that particular season's virus of flu. So that when you do get it, again, you already have the antibodies to deal with it. Again, it was always sold to us that was for the more vulnerable segments of our population. So I don't understand it now that we suddenly deny this science because COVID-19. Like, it doesn't make sense to me. And it seems that to much smarter people, to much more expert people who are raising their voices on this issue, that it doesn't make sense to them either. So anyway, it's on that basis, with that broader debate, I suppose, that my own curiosity is piqued on this issue. And for my own sake, just to satisfy my curiosity, I would like to go and get this antibody test, right? And definitively see, in obviously from the bloodstream, my bloodstream telling the story as to whether I have the antibodies, I've developed the antibodies that have fought COVID-19 in particular. That'll be very interesting because that'll obviously confirm or deny, what's the word? Confirm or it'll tell the story of whether the PCR test, the one where you swab down your nose or your throat, was accurate for me or not. So that's the story, guys. Let me know what you think. I'm sort of seeing some questions here. I'll try and go through just maybe not questions but like comments. Let's see here. Sorry, these fly by a bit quickly. Varishka Bates, I agree with your question because COVID-19 has been a get rich quick scheme for the corrupt politicians at the sake of the nation. There is an element of that. I mean, there really is an element of that because, again, from a politician's perspective, these powers that you appropriate for yourself have allowed you to then open the floodgates of emergency state spending. And where do we now see that this emergency state spending went? To cronies, to the political cronies, the political elites. A lot of people became fantastically wealthy off of, the COVID-19 response. Again, not the virus. It isn't the virus that did this. It isn't the virus that corrupted state institutions. It isn't the virus that created a 500 billion rand lockdown fund, which was looted. It wasn't the virus that did this. It was politicians and their response to this virus. A response which a lot of people are now arguing was simply irrational. Let's see. Jody Taylor, antibody tests established that you have been exposed to the virus. Yes, absolutely. That's the point of why I'm going to go get this test. Excuse me, just to confirm for myself as to whether I had COVID-19 and whether I now have the antibodies for it. Annette Baquette, medical aid only pays for positive tests. I won't be using a medical aid. I'll pay cash for it. Gary Wild says people are tired of COVID, hence the spike in infections. Dude, I'm not sure that's 100% true. But let's assume for a moment that it is true. I think a lot of people would question now whether there being a quote-unquote spike in infections is really a problem when we're clearly seeing that the overwhelming majority of people who have this virus are recovering from it. For the overwhelming majority, I mean 93% in this country in terms of the existing stats and data, but really worldwide, 99%, right? And the arguments around, these people are crowding hospitals and blah, blah, blah. Again, that isn't a function of COVID-19. I think that is a function of the incompetence of South African government over the last 26 years, who are now using COVID-19 to argue that it's this virus which is causing this overcrowding. But a good friend of mine, Dr. Jonathan Witt, pulled up some old articles as far back as, I think, 2008, etc., where he points out that the issue of, the overcrowding of hospitals, The what's the expression? Occupancy rate. That's not the word I'm looking for. Hospitals operate, have always operated at sort of between 80 and 100% in most cases, especially in the states. Um, so it begs the question of why we're suddenly trying to pin COVID-19 on the crowding of hospitals today, when it seems as though this is actually the standard. And I would concede likely that yes, there likely are more people um, who are joining the system, but also at the same time, there are less people who are going to hospital because they're simply being turned away because of this preference, this emphasis on COVID-19. I know of cases of cancer patients. Um, you know, hey guys, I know cases of cancer patients and people who are on chronic meds who are not going to hospitals anymore because hospitals have this developed policy of basically not wanting people to be in the facilities because of the fear of COVID-19. People are really dying of very serious illnesses here that require the sort of medical attention. Um, and I have a sense that we're ignoring these people or they're falling by the wayside because of the almost singular emphasis now on COVID 19. It's actually very depressing. That you might find someone who maybe is a TB patient, um, not going for that regular checkup because of this emphasis on COVID 19. Um, and I'm seeing a lot of people sort of then pin, the so-called excess deaths on COVID-19 as if that's the only virus that's out and about killing and affecting people. In fact, Panda did some very good work on this, on deciphering the category of excess deaths. So you can check out their work. A chap named Peter Castleton actually did a very good thread on it very recently. And again, I always defer. To guys who are much smarter than I am on this issue, because they're the people who I look to for data analysis and sound analysis on a lot of these issues. On Panda 19, the Panda group are exactly that. Um, let's see here. Michael Mills, exactly. Flu did not exist. Flu did not exist this year. Only COVID. That is why I say this is all hogwash. And ever off a sudden, statistics come out of. Guys, take your time to type comments because they come to me at very small text. Let's see here. And all is COVID? Question mark. I doubt it strongly. Gary Wild comes back and says, "We just need to play safe." No, I agree with you. Again, Gary, there's no argument from me, and I've never been one who says we shouldn't take COVID seriously. Of course, there are people, for example, who have much more vulnerable immune systems who will get very sick from not only the flu season as most of them often do, but COVID-19. Let me give an example that's close to home. A good friend of mine who I've always known gets very ill around the flu season. In fact, I used to tease him. I feel bad for saying that, but I used to tease him during because we went to varsity together. He would have a very bad cough. Flu for him was actually quite bad. He got very, very ill recently and was actually hospitalized and was even placed in intensive care, just really to help him breathe. Very recently, he's made a full recovery now and he's back. But I can see why there will be and there are people who can get really ill from this. I'm not discounting this, and I don't think anybody should discount that. But what I don't think we should be doing is then saying, oh, because of these anecdotal cases or these fewer cases where people can get really, really ill, that should now dictate a policy response which is almost irrational and seeks to destroy the entire economy, the entire society because of these few cases. That is a bad policy response to a virus which I think if you had good policy responses to it, maybe even more proactive ones. Why are we not seeing, for example, politicians take a proactive step in saying, "Hey, guys, this virus is almost dependent exclusively on there being people with weaker immune systems, people who are not looking after themselves properly. Why are we not therefore saying things like, maybe at clinics, we're going to dispense for more vulnerable people, sort of vitamins and minerals that help with boosting immune function, zinc complex, vitamin C, vitamin D, etc., etc. Why are we not seeing an emphasis on that, for example, on giving people an opportunity, a greater chance with dealing with this virus? Because yes, this virus does exist. I'm not one to say it doesn't, but I do begin to start seeing an agenda that goes beyond fighting this virus when politicians don't do rational and reasonable things to address it. And this is why I often say, and I just saw the comment now, that politicians are trash. They are using this for their own agenda and not to necessarily fight COVID 19. I've missed a few comments here. In fact, as I say that, let me just wrap up here. All right, because I'm waffling away, and I need to get to the lab. So, guys, look forward to that. I'll probably do a short uh, feedback video and almost part two of this vlog in a way, just to give the result. It won't be long, just to give a result. And if they allow me to film inside, and I'll film, the process of them drawing the blood and blah blah blah. So you can also see what it's all about. And yeah, we'll see. Did Big Daddy Liberty actually have COVID-19? We'll answer that question, in the next, or when I eventually post the video of how this test went. With that being said, guys, thanks for watching. Happy Thursday. Enjoy your day. And remember, you can support the work of BDL. No, 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 no. I'm not going to let YouTube get away with that. I'm going to say my ending line. Never trust a commie.